Good morning to those of you who are on the stream this morning. Welcome, welcome to Global Affairs Unfiltered. As soon as this music stops at K-Talk, I will be joining them as well. Oh, sounds like we're in business. So good morning to the K-Talk audience. You are listening to Global Affairs Unfiltered. I'm Jack Stockwell. Welcome. Welcome this morning on this day of days. Wow, what a time to be alive. What an incredible time to be alive because of what our glorious president had to say last night. Trump is threatening to take out the entire country of Iran by 8 p.m. Eastern time, mind you, tonight, if they don't open up the Straits of Hormuz. He said Iran can be taken out in one night. I would think if that were even remotely possible, he would have done so already. But nevertheless, he's threatening that kind of behavior on the part of the United States, of course, completely under control of Bibi Netanyahu. I sure would like to know what Bibi has on our president. I can only imagine, but to see him turn against at least 8 of his campaign promises and just reject them all and do about the opposite of what he said he was going to do. The most important one of which was to stop all wars and not start any new. And now it's come to the point where, because of the collapse of the Iron Dome over Israel, the latest numbers, and a lot of this comes from the Israeli press, they figure the Iron Dome is down by 60%. How do you measure that? Well, you see the incoming missiles, and 4 out of 10 are struck by the interceptors. 6 of them reach the ground, which is why so much of Tel Aviv right now is a smoldering mess. And this isn't something that somebody who doesn't like Israel is reporting in the sense of uploaded videos. This is the Jerusalem press. The Jerusalem Post is best friends with Bibi. But Haaretz, even though it's a far left liberal publication, doesn't miss a trick. And the Times of Israel, all 3 of these, are reporting what's going on inside of Israel, and it's not a very good picture. And the bombs continue to drop. The missiles continue to drop. Also in Kuwait, where power structures are being hit. The headquarters of the 5th Fleet in Bahrain have pretty well been taken out. And it looks like almost all of the American bases, I can't remember if it's 24 or 28, in the Middle East have been struck sufficiently that they're no longer operational. And troops are being pulled out left and right. As you see some of the reports of a lot of the American forces being brought to places like Norfolk, Virginia, where they do not have room for them. So the local residents are providing room and board for our fighting forces that are being removed from the Middle East. So anyway, Trump threatens that Iran, let me pronounce it correctly, Iraq, Iran, can be taken out in one night. He said maybe tomorrow. Warns every bridge, every power plant. I mean, this is, of course, genocide. The genocide is taken on a new level because now you're going after the public. If you take out their water, and water's a little different in Iran than it is the rest of the Middle East, because Iran is so mountainous, snow all over the place, even this time of year, high in the mountains, providing all kinds of water in different places. I saw one report that less than 4% of the Iranian population relies on desalination. I haven't been able to verify that number. That may be a little low, I'm not sure. But in other places, like Kuwait, Oman, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, the number of their citizens that rely on desalination is up as high as 85 to 95%. And Iran has said, you hit our desalination, we will hit yours. And so it's been tit for tat all along. And so the president says, by 8 p.m. today, Tuesday, April 7th, if they haven't opened up the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, remember, the Straits of Hormuz was open. It was open to everybody a little over a month ago. It was open to everybody before the attack. And now President Trump is threatening genocide against the nation of Iran to open up what was already open before he attacked Israel, or he and Israel attacked Iran in the first place. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the U.S. military is currently making preparations for potential strikes on the energy targets in Iran. We know that universities, airports are already being hit, just as the Iranians have done in Israel, taken out one airport after another. But the Iranians have been much more selective in their targets than the Israelis have. The Israelis, of course, are going after the civilian population with the idea that if they kill enough, I mean, to kill that 175 schoolgirls and teachers on the first hour of the attack back on the evening of February 28th wasn't enough. They've, of course, continued. But, you know, and there's still people who claim that it was Iran who attacked that school, even though it was done with an American Tomahawk. But even the Pentagon has admitted that it was a misfire on the part of Americans to hit that school. But that wasn't enough. Now we've gone after several other targets in Iran with the idea that if you kill enough of their innocent civilians, the civilians will rise up against their government and do something about it. But of course, as you well know, it's had the exact opposite effect. What it has caused in the long run is an incredible unity among the citizens of the country that at one time were fighting each other. There's several different groups in Iran that not only do they have to fight the IRGC and the Revolutionary Guard, as well as the army. The army of Iran is different than the IRGC. They were fighting each other to some degree. Various different Islamic groups were fighting one another. Now they've all banded together. And as recently as this last Saturday night, the videos that are coming from the streets of Tehran and other cities in Iran, where all these people have come together and banded together, and they're still shouting death to America. Of course they're shouting death to America. When you look at what America has done to them, you go back to 1983. Back to 1983 with the Iraq-Iranian war, where we were giving Iraq the chemicals, the deadly gas chemicals that they used against Iran that killed as many as 300,000 Iranian soldiers using American gas. Of course they're saying death to America. I don't support that. I'm not in favor of that by any means, but I sure as hell understand it. And now President Trump is saying, you don't open those straits by tomorrow night, 8 p.m. We're going to bomb you out of existence. We are going to erase you as a civilization. Now, if that's not a war crime, if that's not genocide, I don't know what is. I mean, after how many, 3 years, almost 3 years now of genocide committed by America and Israel against the Palestinians, where the numbers now of innocent Palestinian women and children approach 60,000 who've been killed through genocidal measures, where they drop 1,000-pound bunker buster bombs on tent cities in Gaza. That wasn't enough genocide to make people happy. They got it now, spread it over to Iran. How did we get to this? How did we get to this point? There was a Sunday night report on Axios that the U.S. is proposing this 45-day ceasefire, and that Iran had until, last night, Monday night, I think. Of course it was rejected by Iran. And then later on, Iran issued that 10-point letter via Pakistan as to what has to happen. Well, Iran's negotiations are on the 1,000 and 2,000-pound warheads that they're now sending into Israel. You just don't kill the spiritual leader of another nation of tens of millions of people and expect them just to sit there and say, well, yeah, we had it coming. Now, Iran has made it very clear what they want. Lift all sanctions, and one number I heard was maybe as many as 600 sanctions the Epstein class has used against Iran over the years, withdrawal of all American forces from the Middle East, and the payment of reparations to rebuild Iran. And Trump said that last night. He says, well, maybe we'll rebuild them. Well, Iran is not going to accept a 45-day ceasefire because what's happening now is Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines have all of their surface-to-air interceptor missiles being taken away from them and put on a ship or on cargo carriers and being flown into Israel to try to restock the surface-to-air Iron Dome, which I said is collapsing. By Israel's own report, it's down 60% because 6 out of 10 missiles are hitting the ground. And if you've seen any of these videos that have been spirited out of Israel, it's a horrible, dismal picture that it portrays. I mean, you can even hear Israeli citizens in the background of some of these videos. We're sorry, please stop the bombs. And then Trump says, Iran started not Trump, but Hegseth. Iran started the war, but Trump's going to end it. Iran didn't start this war. Iran was in negotiations in Geneva. They didn't learn the first time when they were in negotiations June of last year in Doha to do something about the accumulation of nuclear material. And so while they're negotiating between the Epstein class, and I call it the Epstein class because that's who's in charge of this, the Epstein class and the Iranian officials, so America sends a missile in right in the middle of their negotiation room and takes out so many of their own people, for crying out loud. And now a second attempt at negotiations in Geneva. They're sitting down talking about how Iran is going to turn over their concentrated nuclear material, and Trump starts the war on the night of February 28th. So Iran is not going to trust any more ceasefire, peace, negotiation, diplomatic talks with the Epstein class anymore, and who can blame them? You're going to just get shot in the back a third time. They're not about to do that. And they're not about to give Israel time to reload their surface-to-air defense interceptors. So Israel strikes this large petrochemical plant in South Pars, which is responsible for half of Iran's petrochemical production. If you look at the map, it's in the southwest corner. You know, if you were to put, you couldn't exactly fit the United States over Iran because Iran kind of runs northeast to southeast, northwest to southeast. But it would be like Southern California. That's about where the South Pars petrochemical plant is. And it's responsible for half of their own production. And then Trump reaffirmed the Tuesday deadline before the vital infrastructure gets attacked, as he said, final. This is our final move. And when he was asked by some interviewers, some news people, what do you say to the American public who's not in favor of this? Have you seen the polls? It's over 60% now of Americans are not in favor of what President Trump is doing against the people of Iran. But he said they're fools. He said Americans who oppose the Iran war are foolish, saying it's all about Tehran not getting a nuke. Well, Tehran isn't going to get a nuke. Tehran wasn't going to get a nuke. In fact, the most powerful character in Iranian civilization up to a month or so ago, who issued a fatwa back in the 1980s that there will be no nuclear bombs made by Iran, the Ali Khamenei himself, who was murdered the night of February 28th, said there will be no nuclear bombs made by Iran. And the only nuclear development we're going to do is for our nuclear power plants. And so the one person who stopped Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, America killed. And now he's saying this whole thing. Now, remember what Rubio said before the war, about the beginning of the war. We did it because Israel was going to do it, And we knew Israel was going to make an attack, and then we didn't have to come in behind the curtains. So we went ahead and joined right from the very beginning. What do you say about a culture like that? Anyway, if you are not in favor of what President Trump said last night, that he is going to erase the Iranian civilization starting at 8 o'clock tonight if Iran does not open the Straits of Hormuz, which of course, as I said, is because of America and Israel that the straits got closed, then he will erase the Iranian civilization. And if you're not in favor of that, you're a fool. Now, I know there's a mixed listenership at K-Talk, and it's been pointed out to me by more than one person that I'm losing my audience because I'm not rah-rah MAGA and rah-rah Trump and rah-rah genocide. But I can only say it as I see it. What are my sources of information? From all over the planet. But one thing I don't listen to anymore is anything that's controlled by Israel or AIPAC, like Fox News, owned by Jewish money. And it's getting hard to distinguish anymore between what is Jewish and what is Israeli. If you've seen some of the reports coming out of Israel, a large portion of the Israeli population does not support this action on the part of the United States and Israel. There are large Jewish communities in New York City as well as Israel who support Iran, who don't want this to take place. And then there are occasional reports coming out of Iran showing the Islamic people, the Christians, and the Jews living together peacefully. That there's over 20 mosques in the more densely populated areas of Iran where they've been getting along just fine. And this idea that all of Iran is compelled to live by Sharia is simply not true. So Israel kills the experienced, long-time head of the IRGC intelligence, and then Iranian missile strikes as a result on Haifa residential complexes. So the U.S.-Israeli strikes have been a noticeable uptick lately against Iranian institutions of higher learning. Tehran Sharif University, which is often dubbed the MIT of Iran, has been attacked. And after this attack, Agrachi, the foreign minister, threatened Iranian retaliation, warning aggressors will see our might. And then he said several other universities have also been struck over the last 30 days. And one regional report says that at least 30 Iranian colleges and universities have suffered damage. Now, neither the U.S. nor Israel has divulged the reasons behind attacking university campuses. You would think that they would use their missiles and whatever means that the United States is employing to attack Iran on military sites, energy sites, communication centers, defense structures, rather than universities. So, of course, many of these students at these various campuses were involved in the January protests, and the U.S. claims that they're helping the protesters through the Trump-ordered massive bombing campaign of their universities. So, last night, as I said, Trump threatens to take out the entire nation of Iran. 4 times bigger than Iraq, as big as Western Europe. What's Western Europe? What's considered Western Europe? Germany, France, Spain, little Switzerland, Italy, that whole section before you get over to the eastern side of Germany. That's a huge country, almost 100 million, 95 million people. He's going to take them out tonight if the Straits of Hormuz doesn't open up. And he said one of the reasons for the ceasefire proposals, if they don't work, is he's going to take their oil. Yet they just got through bombing the South Pars oil production plant once again. So President Trump kind of centered his remarks on the weekend search and rescue operation for the downed airmen. Again, you're getting conflicting reports that somehow the downed airman, now it looks like a lieutenant colonel, the defensive engineer in the back seat of a F-15 Strike Eagle, was successfully extracted from the country. The Iranian press, of course, is showing the person captured and being interrogated by the IRGC. But from the sources that I have followed, including several European press, some American press, Iranian press, various Islamic news outlets, the Iranians shot down 2 C-130s, shot down the Warthog, shot down 4 helicopters, and the President Trump said, well, we blew up the plane ourselves because it got stuck in the sand, and we didn't want the Iranians to get our technology. What do you say to that? So in the midst of trying to save this downed airman, and I hope the Epstein class story is correct. I hope they were able to extract this lady in one piece. But there was a leak. Highly sensitive intelligence information was leaked. President Trump said rescue leak is a national security concern. We will examine the media firm that reported this leak later. And then he said, we have to find the leaker. That's a sick person. Then he warned of potential legal action. He says he threatens to jail the journalist over the leak. And then he says, oh, the left is going to love that. Listen, I understand that he's not a polished speaker. I appreciate that. But it's just sometimes hard to swallow that rhetoric. Now, if this leak of information was in violation of American law, then there should be somebody arrested. There should be somebody prosecuted. I'm not saying that we should have leakers all over the place, but sometimes here and there, now and then, a whistleblower is a good thing. So he doubled down when he was talking about prosecuting the person who leaked the information. He kind of doubled down on the country of Iran will be taken out in one night. And so there's some people running around, oh, President Trump's threatening nuclear weapons. No, that's not what he's doing. It's just more bravado on his part. I don't know what the markets are going to do this morning as a result of what he was saying, but it's interesting to notice over the last several weeks that usually Sunday night is when the Epstein class releases another statement about how negotiations are now in progress. And it looks like both sides have come together in a moment of honest diplomacy to get this war to end. And of course, the markets jump the next morning. It's always interesting how those announcements come out on Sunday night, only to find out that any threat that this is, it's just like last night's threat. We're going to end the civilization of Iran. By this afternoon, he may extend it another 5 days. He may extend the threat 10 days. If, with all of the might that's been used to bomb hospitals, schools, universities, that the Epstein class is using against Iran, why aren't they using them against the missile positions that defend the Strait of Hormuz? Take those out. Then everybody can come and go in the Strait of Hormuz. Don't attack Karg Island. Let the island continue to pump its oil, although it gets a lot of oil from the South Pars oil field that has been seriously injured, not destroyed, but serious production setbacks as a result of the most recent attack. Then during the question and answer session after this presser by the president, he signaled that he has this undisclosed strategy. He said, I have the best plan of all, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. While insisting, he says, we didn't do this for the regime change. It's kind of like we had a couple of cards up our sleeve. And even though he says there was a regime change, he said we were successful in the regime change in that the new regime is smarter, sharper, and less radical. But if you listen to the new regime leaders of Iran, I don't know that they're any smarter. I don't know that they're any sharper. And I don't know that they're any less defensive in protecting their country. I would say that rather than radical. Because remember, I've talked about this on my show a couple of times. Other people have talked about it, that in the way our top levels of government are set up, you've got the president, who there's a vice president, one heartbeat away to take his place. But then you've got the Secretary of Defense, and you've got the Secretary of State, and the Treasury. And what if you lose them? Well, you got to go searching for another Secretary of Defense, another Secretary of State, another Secretary of the Treasury. And you can come up with somebody. You come up with a bunch of people on a short list. Then you submit that to, one of those both Senate and House committees that review those names. And then you find out what they're willing to support. And then a person is finally submitted on the part of the Oval Office to take these positions, and keeping in mind the amount of time that takes for all that to take place. And then they have to go before Senate and House committees, and then the Senate and House vote to accept these people. In Iran, it's a little different. How long did it take for Mojtaba Khamenei to take the place of his father after his father's murder? And then these leading generals of not of just the IRGC, but of the Iranian army. Remember, they're two different organizations. There's far more people in the Iranian army. This is where the Iranian citizens are coming out in tens of thousands volunteering to fight for the army of Iran against the United States and Israel, and the Kurds and whoever else that the Epstein class may bring into this battle on the ground. That there's several generals right there to take another general's position. They step right in. I mean, the image that was portrayed to me is if and I always, when I think of World War II, I always think of the Spielberg series, The Band of Brothers, based on the book, about E Company, essentially during the Battle of the Bulge. A little bit before that, a little bit after that, and then eventually their invasion of Germany. And there are some very intense battle scenes where E Company is on the front line against German emplacements or German attacking forces. And you have your major, and under major you have captains, and under captains you have lieutenants, and under lieutenants you have sergeants, and under sergeants you have platoon leaders. And if one of them gets taken out, you have the sergeant may become the new lieutenant. Battlefield promotions were very common. And in Easy Company, the character was played by Damian Lewis. I forget his name, the real person he was representing. Went from a sergeant to a major in about a year, simply because of battlefield promotions. Well, the same thing with Iran. The American forces, the Epstein class, makes a big deal about how they took out this general who's in charge of all this stuff. There's 5 people working with him, any one of which can step into that position within minutes of the death of the previous person serving. So to say that the new regime that's in charge now of Iran is smarter, sharper, and less radical, why are they continuing to send every day another wave, and some days 2 and 3 and 4 waves of these missiles against Israel? So the U.S. and Israel are carrying out these intense bombing raids on the South Pars petrochemical complex. One number I saw was as high as 85% of the country's production in this sector of the country. The damage is massive, yet the complex covers 54,000 hectares, bigger than acres, and would require many days of sustained activity to actually take the fullness or to destroy the total potential of petroleum production. Then he made some other interesting comments. He said President Trump in the presser yesterday that Iranians would rise up, but the consequences are great. He said this, and I had to listen to it twice. I backed it up and listened to it again because I wasn't sure he actually said this. He said the Iranians want us to keep bombing. He said the Iranian people are willing to suffer for their freedom. And then he emphasized that the free traffic of oil in the Hormuz Strait must be in the Iran deal. And then he warned that every bridge and every power plant will be decimated by midnight tonight if the Iranians don't accept a ceasefire by 8 p.m. this evening. And this followed a report from the Wall Street. Why am I bringing this up? Because every now and then, the same thing was happening during the Ukraine war, when the possibility of medium-range missiles might be delivered from the West into Ukraine to reach the interior of Russia. And what Russia responded with every time that threat looked like it might be carried through, just severe aerial bombardment with Russian missiles of various places inside of Iran, to the point where Putin even said, this is no longer a battle on the ground. We can do it from the air. Now, I heard at the top of the hour news how Iran is actually winning the war now because they stopped the invasion of Russia, and Russia has kind of slowed things down. Putin is probably one of the most patient people on the planet. And he's waiting to see how this thing turns out in the Middle East. Yeah, they've stopped the advancement. They're holding on to what they've advanced on. They're holding their ground. What is left of the Iranian army or the Ukrainian army isn't making any headway. But the Russian Federation is waiting to see how things play out in the Middle East. Because if there is a decimating attack starting at midnight tonight on the part of the Epstein class against Iran, as President Trump has threatened to do, who knows what Iran or what Russia and China are prepared to do as well. Because if you take out every bridge and every power plant, you bring that country to a standstill. If you take out their desalination, you're committing genocide against their citizens. That's an act of war as described in the Geneva Convention, or the Nuremberg Conventions, and then the following Geneva Conventions on what constitutes fairness in warfare. There was a report from the Wall Street Journal that the U.S. military is making preparations to hit the energy targets in Iran. Now, with President Trump ratcheting up his demand for Tehran to open the Strait of Hormuz, what is this going to do to oil prices? Because Iran is not going to open the Straits of Hormuz. And Iran still has, excuse me, according to the best experts that I've been able to research, thousands of missiles. Don't think because they've slowed down the missile attack that they've run out of missiles. There was a heavy barrage of missiles in the beginning to deplete the surface-to-air interceptors and David's sling and the Iron Dome that the Israeli government had to protect their cities and their people. You know, it's like sacrificing several of your pieces in a chess game, only to have one or two fatal moves against the king at the end to checkmate. Well, they've depleted them, like I said, by Israel's own admission. The Iron Dome is down 60%. Well, the same thing with the Russian Federation in the Ukraine. They haven't slowed down the attack because the Ukrainian army is mounting a successful resistance. It's because they don't have to. They still send in their little drones. You end up losing a lot less of your armed forces when you have machines fighting for you. Well, where's this going to leave us? Well, the head of the intelligence organization of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was killed yesterday in a Monday airstrike, according to Iranian media. And the IRGC-linked Tasman news agency reported by the IRGC Public Relations Department that their Major General Majid Kademi was killed earlier in the day during the attack by the U.S. and Israeli forces. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces stated earlier on X that Kademi was one of the IRG's most senior commanders with decades of experience. So Sunday night into Monday saw significant casualties in Israel after the IRGC claimed in a statement carried by state media that Iranian forces had targeted an oil refinery in Haifa. But instead, it appears that the missiles slammed directly into a residential building, killing at least 4 Israelis. The building must have been pretty empty. It only killed 4. Search and rescue teams have spent more than half a day pouring through the ruins of the complex, recovering 2 bodies early yesterday. The casualties could climb, they said, amid continuing ongoing recovery efforts. Then another regional source said over 160 Israelis have been transferred to hospitals over the past 24 hours, over 160. So one of the reports that I saw, and you see these clouds of black smoke rising up into the sky out of Tel Aviv. I noticed Fox News, as I look at it occasionally, waiting for reports out of Jerusalem or out of Israel, that the camera angles are faced away from the rising clouds of smoke, whereas Channel 14, Channel 12, Channel 14 in Israel show the clouds of smoke because their cameras focus on it. Just yesterday, over 15 cluster warheads hit targets in Tel Aviv. Approximately, as I said, 60%. This is reported by the Israeli press. 60% of the Iranian missiles bypassed Israel's defense system. So, again, just to summarize here, at the White House annual Easter event, which would have been a wonderful time for President Trump to just repeat the comments that were made by Pope Leo XIV, the object of laying down your weapons and sitting down and reasoning together. He broke into a profane tirade using the F word of the crazy Iranians. And he said that the new 10-point Iran proposal was a big step, but it's not good enough. So we'll have to see what happens. And he said this, essentially that the war could end very quickly if they do the things that they need to do. He said war is about one thing. This war of the United States and Israel against Iran is about one thing. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And remember, the day before the attack, President Trump's talking about an imminent attack on the United States from Iran. Even several spokespeople inside the U.S. military and Rubio hinted to it. No, there wasn't an imminent attack. Iran is no threat to the United States whatsoever. The same thing you heard from Bush and his crowd in the early 2003 about Iraq. That Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction that can reach the United States, and we've got to get in there and take them out as fast as possible. And so the thing that started this several weeks ago, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And then he also said, President Trump said here Sunday, if I had my choice, I'd take their oil. And then he said, if they don't yield, they're not going to have bridges or power plants. Now, there were interesting remarks also claiming that he said, again, he repeated the 45,000 protesters have been killed. He said this, as of this morning, 45,000 protesters have been killed in Iran, though it's entirely unclear and very dubious as to where he got a figure like that, because the leading press outlets around this planet have said it's at the most it's 5,000, and most of those 5,000 were various groups fighting against one another until the army stepped in to stop it. So how many killed how many, we don't know, but it looks like there could have been as many as 5,000. He said the Iranian people want to hear bombs because they want to be free. That's an interesting thing to say. First Lady Melania said the U.S. is fighting for the future of the children of Iran. Another interesting moment is some corners of the MAGA group are growing increasingly skeptical and angry over this. And then when the president was asked about the Americans who pose what's going on, as I said earlier, he says they're foolish because the war is about one thing. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they weren't moving before the murder of their supreme leader towards a nuclear weapon. Even the IAEA said that. And other various investigative groups said, no, they don't go past 60%. They're saving that for their nuclear reactors. You see the latest nuclear reactor development here in Utah? Thank goodness somebody is finally moving into the 21st century. It looks like we're going to get a nuclear reactor. Thank goodness. On the fourth generation, where it consumes most of its own waste. Well, Iran set a 10-point plan in return to the president's demand for complete capitulation and regime change in opening the straits. And per Press TV, they said this, quote, the 10-point plan rejects a simple ceasefire, stressing the need for permanent resolution that safeguards Iran's interests. Key demands include ending regional hostilities, ensuring safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's no secret that Iran is seeking a permanent end to the war on terms that would ensure it was never attacked again, which is part of their demands to the United States and Israel. we have to have some kind of not just, all right, we won't hurt you anymore, kind of a comment. But Iran has emphasized the need for a permanent end. And this answer that they have given includes a set of demands, the safe conflicts in the end of the conflicts in the region, a protocol for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and don't think it's going to be free anymore. No, no. When you look at what you have to pay to get your ship through the Suez Canal, what you have to pay to get your ships through the canal in Central America, like 100,000, 150,000 per ship. I don't think it's ever going to be free again. But Tehran has rejected direct talks with Washington because they know if they sit down and have direct talks with Washington, Washington, for a third time, will stab them in the back and send a missile in to destroy the negotiators, as they've done twice already. And Tehran has also rejected the White House ceasefire overtures. And yet, Monday, the little dance keeps repeating itself. As I said earlier, it seems like every Sunday night you get this report from Axios that a peace deal is imminent. The markets jump up high Monday morning. Those who know that this statement is going to be forthcoming probably are buying all the stock that they need to buy on the market, knowing the prices are going to jump Monday morning. So what do you do with all of this? Where's this all going to go? Well, today's going to be an interesting day as this plays out. And by way of something personal here, it's going to be an interesting day for me the way this plays out, because I have new patients to see. Yes, I'm going to play a commercial for myself. The number of people that we have been able to help since this 1/2 off special started back in December and still going. People still taking advantage of it. Today, I am consulting with a mother and 2 children who have problems that need to be addressed structurally. There's 3 today that I will be talking to about setting up some kind of a treatment plan to take care of them. All coming in under this 1/2 off special. I talked to a lady yesterday whose dizziness, I've worked on her 3 times. Her dizziness of 4 years is gone. I talked to another fellow yesterday whose low back pain and sciatica is crippling him to where he can't work. He came back in yesterday for his first follow-up. It's gone. The low back pain and sciatica is gone. These things are really so easy to fix. But you've got to get yourself scheduled so we can sit down for free for a 1/2 hour to talk about what's going on. I'll show you what I do. You show me what's wrong. I show you what I do, what is capable of happening for your benefit. If you want me to take care of you, I'll take care of you. If not, you can go your way, I'll go mine, and we'll still be friends. So in the midst, it just seems to me to be even more pertinent now than ever as to what's coming down the pike. Because if the president tries to carry through with this latest threat to send Iran back into non-existence, starting at midnight, if they don't open the straits by 8 p.m. East Coast time this evening, what is going to happen to this country as a result of that without any attack from Iran? You'll see gasoline double. You'll see food prices double or triple. You're going to see massive unemployment, businesses failing left and right. So that's why I reach out to my patients with newsletters, text, whatever else I can. If you want me to take care of those problems that have been plaguing you for some time, now is the time to do it. And the people who seem to be the least knowledgeable of what is actually happening on this planet is the average American, but that's nothing new. That's been going on for decades. So here we are on the edge of the 250th anniversary of our country. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of what our revolutionary leaders did to the British Empire, how against improbable numbers, the most powerful army on the planet was defeated by an army half of which were just farmers. And what that has created on the planet since then, in the sense of liberty and freedom, and the ability to rise up against your plantation masters. So I want to be a part of the celebration, but I want to be a part of the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration in a nation that is, like President Reagan talked about, the light on the side of the hill, a light to other nations of liberty and peace and justice, as opposed to what America is representing to the rest of the planet now. It breaks my heart to say these things. I'm not happy about it. But we're going to go to break here in a few moments. Lowell's going to take over. I appreciate those who like and subscribe on the stream, as well as to my patients at KTalk. The phone number to schedule an appointment is 801-523-1890. 801-523-1890. I'll give you my best. I'll give you my time. I'll give you my best of nearly 4 decades of experience of taking care of the spine and the relief of its subsequent pain when it's misaligned. So I think that'll do it. Tomorrow's a health show. I want to get back into the stages of disease that I started 2 weeks ago. I think you'll find that very interesting. Things you can do to monitor your own health and turn your own health profile around. That'll be tomorrow's program. So as soon as I see 9 o'clock, I'm just going to go ahead and end the stream. Those of you on the stream, thank you for being a part of this, part of the regular show. If you can like, share, subscribe, whatever, it helps the algorithm by a large degree. So I'm going to end that.